why Aries? Why is it so important in the chart and world like in geopolitics as well?
Eris was conjunct my eighth house moon. So that explains a lot. And
Mhm.
in that relocation chart, Eris is right on my MC. Is it an accident that I wrote a book on Eris? I don't think so. Right, right. And we're seeing what's happening. It's not over. That there's a shift occurring. And democracy itself is really nothing more than a social experiment. We are the first society since ancient Greece to be a democracy, and it's very, very fragile. Obviously, Eris is going to form a square to the Pluto in the United States chart 9 times, beginning June of next year, and the ninth one at the end will be in 2030. So the next 5 years are going to be absolutely swallowed up in a sense, or just awakened by all this energy. The word that really became the key word as we move through the pandemic was the word essential. It's a Taurus word, and Uranus was in Taurus at that time. Eris has been active longer than that. Eris was discovered in 1923. We saw her for the first time.
Ah.
And within the next 5 years, we had the Great Depression, and then we went into World War II. All of these things were really Erisian in nature because each one of them, in their own way, made us see something in our society, here in the United States especially, that we were not seeing. And right now, we're getting the biggest hit of all with the way that the politics are going. Eris is saying this doesn't work anymore. It's exactly what's happening, saying this no longer works.
Welcome back again to another Backstage Astrology episode. My name is Maria Medina, and today I'm so happy to be with Daniel Fiverson, Evolutionary Astrologer. Daniel, how are you today? And thanks for being here.
I'm wonderful. I'm especially well here today to be here with you, and so appreciative for to be able to speak with you today.
Daniel, thank you so much. Can you tell people a little bit about what you do? I usually ask them who are they behind the astrologer, but first I want people to know the type of astrology you do.
I'm an evolutionary astrologer, and my work is after the work of Jeffrey Wolf Green, who was one of the original people who actually began to work with this methodology. Basically, in a nutshell, the difference between evolutionary astrology and other Western astrology is that, and again, I hope I don't insult any Western astrologers because I believe it's all good. I don't think there's such a thing as good or bad astrology unless it's just not well, thought out. But the big difference is that Western astrology, for the most part, is descriptive. It tells you who you are, which is okay. But I think that most of us, by the time we get to a certain point in our lives, already know who we are. Evolutionary astrology tells us why we are who we are. It goes behind the understanding of our lives to explain, it may perhaps, yes, explain the successes, though the successes generally, uh, we take them for granted to some degree. We don't take them for granted, but we understand them. It's the crises that we don't understand. It takes the hard part. And the basis of the work is to understand that we grow through crisis. We don't grow through achievement necessarily. When we achieve something, we think, okay, I did that, I'm done. And, it's a done deal. when we fail at something or something pushes us back, that's when we have to really look at it and say, well, what happened here? Why did that happen? Why do I keep having these same recurring incidents in my life that just happen time after time, no matter what I do?
Wonderful, wonderful, and very detailed explanation. Thank you so much because sometimes people exactly they don't understand the differences between, one branch and the other one. I had a reading with Daniel, and I have to tell you, it was pretty amazing in the sense that Daniel told me the story not only of my chart but also of my evolutionary path in very easy to understand ways. And it sounds like I'm promoting you, but I really had a great time and I learned so much. There's still a lot to unpack from that reading, but the way that you were telling me that story was really wonderful for me, and obviously discovering a lot of things that I didn't know about myself. But Daniel, tell us why evolutionary astrologer? What draw you to this branch?
It's a good question, and it's not necessarily an easy one to ask. I don't have, specifics that say, well, I woke up one day and I wanted to be an astrologer. It really, astrology found me. I didn't find it. And it really began many, many years ago. I was just wandering through a bookstore and my eye caught this one of these big books that sits on a cocktail table. It had a picture on it of this wonderful looking tawny, huge lion. And the lion was looking at me. He looked right up at me. And it obviously caught my attention. I almost could, I was just drawn in. And needless to say, I bought the book, I took it home, and that was the beginning of my journey. The book was about Leo. I should say that the book was all about the sign of Leo. Leos, want to know about themselves. Of all the signs in the zodiac, that's the one at the top of the list that wants to know who they are. So it was just a natural thing. It's very serendipitous.
Wow, Daniel, and what are your big three if you want to share with us? You have some Leo in your chart or
I'm a sun in Leo. Obviously, I was born in July, but I
uh,
have I have three planets in Leo in my 12th house. The sun
mm.
is there. They're strung together. There are two conjunctions that actually are pretty. The three of them are relatively wide apart, but they're chained. So I have my sun, my Jupiter, and my Pluto, all working in tandem in my 12th house. And the 12th house is not a Leo house. The 12th house is a Neptune house. So it's interesting because it's what has for years, and that trip through the bookstore was at least 50 years ago, maybe even more, or maybe close to, I'll leave it alone. I don't want to be that old, but it occurred a long, long time ago, and it was a path that really came up early in my life to follow metaphysics. I learned about I Ching and tarot, through the years as well. So there's been a whole lineage of the ancient teachings that have attracted me, drawn me in. And needless to say, in the 12th house, which these are all 12th house events, I've always felt that it was just something that in one way or another I've done before, especially being an astrologer. I often kid myself and say I must have been a scribe in Egypt because I'm just so involved with it.
Wow, amazing. And how have you lived that Leo energy in the 12th house? Because the 12th house is, a little bit misunderstood, I think, and everyone lives it differently. So how has it been for you to have that Sun and Jupiter and Pluto in the 12th house?
My journey has been a series of life cycles where I didn't just all of a sudden become an astrologer. I had two, three other careers and each one of them I thought that's my dharma. That's what I came here to do, to do these separate things that I was doing. But as I realize it, at least the last one itself, I was an IT tech for many years, and I realized it was about helping other people. Yes, I was doing something that I enjoyed. I was working with a science, and astrology is clearly a science. It's a divine science.
Mhm.
But it was a very non-Leo kind of connection for me because it was about me, but it wasn't about me. It was about my ability to share me with other people. And so astrology I became magnetized to it because it was so fulfilling from that perspective to be able to sit with somebody and just help them understand themselves. I had to have all those other careers. I was in my 60s before I actually sat down in front of my first client, 17, 18 years ago. You have to have enough of your own life experiences, getting knocked down enough times and standing up again and begin to understand what those crises are about in order to be able to sit with somebody else and be able to get understand what they're going through because you've gone through it yourself.
Great. So, Daniel, before we continue with your own story, I really want to bring people's attention to the fact that you just wrote an amazing book about Aries, which is one of the reasons why I got to know your YouTube channel and I approached you, and also, I bought other things from you, certain products, astrology products. So, tell us more, why Aries? Why is it so important in the chart and world, like in geopolitics as well?
Well, first of all, the thing that was most remarkable for me was when I realized that Eris was conjunct my eighth house moon. So that explains a lot. And you and I had a discussion last week about relocation charts. And in that relocation chart, Eris is right on my MC. And what's really remarkable about it is that every time it goes retrograde, it flips back and forth over my MC. It's got it done it 6 times in the past
Oh,
couple of years.
wow.
So is it an accident that I wrote a book on Eris? I don't think so. Right, right. I've always been interested in mythology. And the Greek mythology obviously is so closely related to all of the astrological archetypes that it became a natural to really delve into it. And began to speak about Eris, a talk that I did here locally back in 2009.
Mm.
So that was my first, and she was discovered in 2004, actually 2005. She was discovered twice in a sense. The first time they didn't know it was her, but that's her nature. But I realized that I am an Erisian nature, have an Erisian nature. I am have often been uninvited, but end up finding a seat at the table anyway. And that's who she is. We all have her in our chart. It's where we say, no, I can't do this anymore. I can't. I have to say something about this. I have to act. I have to make this obvious that we can't continue to go on in this fashion, whether it's personally, collectively, in our neighborhood, in our work, and whatever it is that we do. We have to really begin to understand that when something needs to change, somebody has to be the one to say, okay, let's go. This is the direction we need to go in, and that's who Eris is. And to some degree, I've always been that way.
Wow. So do you have the book with you? Can you show us the book if you have it there with you so people can see the
Sure.
book and
Yeah.
the covers, because apparently the covers are important. Oh wow, beautiful. Fairies, Sacred Feminine Force of Evolutionary Astrology.
Yeah.
Very beautiful.
Can hold this still here. There we go.
That's so exciting. I can't wait to read it. Is it out already, or when is it gonna be out?
To anybody who's local in the States, I have copies, especially if somebody wants a signed copy, but it will be available on Amazon. Yeah, and you can pre-order it. Just go to Amazon and type in my last name and it'll come up there. And I've written a few other books. You'll see those too. Those are a few years ago, but nothing like this. And you can order it and have it. I think it's a good read.
I think I'm sure it will be a good read, and especially for those who have Aries in a specific angle on their charts, or conjunct some other main planet. I personally have Aries and Lilith, that's what drove me to your work to understand more. Like, oh my God, who are these goddesses? Like, what did they do? So that's how I connected with your work as well. But tell us, why is it so important today? Because I've heard from you and from other fellow astrologers that Eris she played a very specific role during 2020, during the pandemic. So can you tell us more about her role and how she's shaping all these structures that now are falling apart in a way?
Yeah, it's not just the pandemic, but we can start with that. The word that really became the key word as we move through the pandemic was the word essential. Time and time again, we heard about essential businesses, things that were essential. It's a Taurus word, and Uranus was in Taurus at that time. So we were it was beginning to uncover what was really essential for our well-being. Obviously, it caused a lot of unwell-being, but sometimes that's how it works. Eris has been active longer than that.
Mhm.
Eris was discovered in 1923. We saw her for the first time.
Ah.
And within the next 5 years, we had the Great Depression, and then we went into World War II. All of those things happened as Eris ingressed Aries at the beginning of our century. And
Mm.
she's gonna remain there really until the almost the end of this century until the 2050s. So she has been all of the events that we have had, whether it was the 60s, whether it was the war in Vietnam, all of these things were really Arisian in nature because each one of them in their own way made us see something in our society here in the United States especially that we were not seeing. And right now we're getting the biggest hit of all with the way that the politics are going. Now, yesterday was huge in our country. I didn't know if you've seen any of the headlines, but there was a huge shift to the left away from what's been going on. Two women are now governors of their states, Democratic women,
Mm.
and it's a realization. Of the 80 million people who turned out at the No Kings marches over the past couple of months, that there's a shift occurring. I have another a piece that I've been working on. It's not quite ready, but it's also about Eris, and it's there is a really interesting aspect that's about to occur. It's already occurring because Eris has a 577-year orbit. So
Mhm.
it's not like she's come and gone in a week or two or a month. It's decades that she hangs around when she makes some of these aspects. But Eris is going to form a square to the Pluto in the United States chart 9 times, beginning June of next year, and the ninth one at the end will be in 2030. So the next 5 years are going to be absolutely what's the word? Thinking of an Erisian word to use here, absolutely swallowed up in a sense, or just awakened, I guess, by all this energy. And we're seeing what's happening. It's not over. I think that I'd like to think that because yesterday's election was so positive, that the worst is over, but it's not. It's just that we're just moving through the early days of this. It to bounce around a little bit, if we look at Neptune and as well as Pluto, the United States right now is moving through a time frame that is a repeat of not just the American Revolution, which when the last time that Pluto was in Capricorn, which is where it is in the U.S. chart and where it has been up until it entered Aquarius recently,
Mhm.
but also um, the U.S. Civil War, when there was a Neptune opposition, Neptune opposing Neptune in the U.S. chart.
Mm.
Both of those transits are happening simultaneous and now and for the next couple of years, they began a couple of years ago. So we're moving through that same thing, and we can see it. That's exactly what we're seeing, is the revelations that all of the things upon which this country was founded upon have really not materialized in the way that our founding fathers hoped that they would. And there's no blame here. It's an evolutionary thing. We all grow. The thing is, a country doesn't just grow in 85 years. A country grows over 200 or 300 years. And democracy itself is really nothing more than a social experiment. We are the first society since ancient Greece to be a democracy, and it's very, very fragile, obviously. So these are the lessons that we're learning, how easily it is for money and greed to overcome what really is righteous or spiritual or good for everybody rather than self-oriented. But what's happening is that we're beginning to recognize that in essence, we're like a colony of ants. There's only one of us on this planet. And until we begin to work that way, we're going to continue to have these individual groups and people who are going to just take advantage of whatever power or situation or assets they have to be better than everybody else. And it just doesn't work. And Eris is saying this doesn't work anymore. It's exactly what's happening. Say this no longer works.
Mhm, mhm. So just for people to for those who maybe don't know much about Aries, and I should have asked you this before, but can you just explain briefly what is her? Is she like an asteroid? Is she a fixed star? And how long it's her orbit? Like some like introductory tiny details for those who don't know.
Good one. Yes. So Eris is a planet,
Hmm.
and she was first sighted in 2003. She's out beyond the Kuiper Belt. The Kuiper Belt is the area beyond Neptune, where all the asteroids and all of those. She was first captured herself. She was seen on a film plate, but they thought she was a fixed star. 2 years later, when they were capturing Sedna, they
Hmm.
saw that that little dot had moved.
Ah,
That's the
wow.
accurate story. And so they realized that she wasn't a fixed star, she was a planet. And that's when all the tumult began, because what was she? And Eris's discovery alone upset not just the world of astronomy, but the world of astrology as well. The fact that she even existed. And what happened is the International Astrological Union, the IAU, which oversees all the uh, naming of planets and it's a major astronomical society organization. They decided that they had to define what does it mean to be a planet. The definition of a planet went back to Galileo. It hadn't changed since Galileo. And
Wow.
all that Galileo said is that it was a wandering star. Okay. So here we are, what, 1,000 years later with this new object in the sky. What is it? So they sat down and they made up a whole new set of rules as to what is a planet. Well, that in itself was a whole revolutionary event as well, because Pluto got demoted because it didn't fulfill all the requirements that they delineated. And then Eris was named not just some kind of an asteroid or some object, it became a planet, a dwarf planet itself. They created a whole new category of called dwarf planets. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, as an evolutionary astrologer who believes that Pluto is the entry point into the natal chart to really begin to understand the astrological puzzle of the chart, no, that just doesn't sound right. That's so but we have, it is what it is. But the whole thing really threw everything up in the air. It was, like they threw up all the silverware and see where it lands. And so just this beginning, just this discovery story begins to tell you something about her.
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm. disruption, no, and
Right, exactly.
discordia, if I say in English, discord or something.
Discordant. Yes.
Uh-huh. Ah,
Yes. Very discordant. It upset two huge sciences. So, that's where we sit today, and we're still discovering many, many more objects out there, more than can be discovered. This new one, I don't want to get into Three Eye Atlas, but we're all of a sudden there's this whole new universe that we recognize that we're part of that we never knew existed, and it's
mhm.
huge. And clearly, from a cosmological perspective, spiritual perspective, it indicates that we are on the verge of a huge leap of evolutionary leap of who we are. And it's what we're going through. And what's happening here on Earth as well is a reflection of it, is the immediate evidence outside our front door. What's happening in our neighborhood, our town, our country,
Yeah,
where we live, what's happening globally, as far as literally as the eye can see. So we were blessed to be born in interesting times.
definitely not boring at all, but
Right.
yeah,
It's
but
it's
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So what can you tell us a little bit more about? I think nobody has talked about it in the podcast. You know, these trans-Neptunian objects like Eris and Sedna and I don't know, Orcus, I think there are a little. So in evolutionary astrology, how do you work with those specifically, if I can ask?
There isn't a lot of if there are um, understandings of these outer planets, but I think that Eris, as far as I'm concerned, and Sedna are really the significant ones because they're
Mm.
the larger objects. We've got Haumea and Makemake.
Uh-huh.
They haven't been in our awareness long enough to really know. And there's been mythology that's been applied to them, and the mythology seems to be a fit, seems to work. That Sedna is about loss. It is
Mhm.
about pain. It's about uh, you know really it's about increasing consciousness, but it's through difficulty. S- I think the books are still being written. I think it's too early to say that's to delineate this is what it is because we haven't had enough time to really study it. I think there's more material on Eris because we can track her. But
Mm.
the outer TNOs, trans-Neptunian objects, their
Mhm.
orbits are so long.
Long.
Sedna is 2,000 years. Okay,
Mhm.
excuse me, 20 not 2,000, 20,000 years.
Twenty.
So how can we possibly get a grip on it? Okay.
Mm. Mhm. I see.
What's interesting though, just to jump around a bit, is Sedna is conjunct Uranus right now. We have to learn to just be observers, and as we observe the world around us, collectively and individually, we will begin to learn firsthand what
Mm.
these trans-Neptunian objects really mean. We have to study them. We have to be a student before we can be a teacher or a professor to delineate with great affirmation. This is what this means. I think it's too soon to go there. Uh,
Interesting. So how long did it take you writing that book? How was the process of writing this book about Aries?
Well, it's a good question. Like I said, my first public talk was 18 years ago, something like that.
Mhm.
And I've been writing about her ever since and observing her in my life and in clients who are coming and also in studying it and thinking about it and looking at the transits. The book really covers a lot of that material because
Mm.
I have looked at everything that's happened that is Eris had some role in since it was discovered in the 1920s.
Mhm.
And there's a lot that's been revealed. You can look at some of those dates and you can say, oh my God, that's why that happened. It makes sense. And it also adds context to our understanding of the concept of karmic necessity that we only really grow through crisis. We don't stop smoking because our doctor or our life partner or our mother or father says, don't smoke, they're bad for you. We don't stop until the morning in the middle of winter that we wake up and we can't breathe. And, we're afraid we're not going to see spring. That's when we think about stopping. And so this is the process. We will encounter these crises where we need to change, and that's what Eris does. She throws these potholes and obstacles in our way, or tears something up that we take for granted to make us see that we are investing ourselves and our personal growth on things that are really worthless, and not only worthless, but in some cases actually destructive to our personal growth, that they're taking us backward, making us ill, making us sick. There's a whole litany of things that, when I grew up, you could walk through the supermarket and you could pull anything off the shelf and take it home and you're okay. Now you have to walk through the supermarket with a magnifying glass to read every ingredient that's in that bottle or can or box, because most of it is being made in a chemical factory.
Yeah.
And and then you hear that this person has cancer and that person has cancer, and it's just increasing everywhere we go. And it's because we are what we eat. And that's a very old adage. It's an ad, that food is medicine, and use your food as medicine and medicine as your food. It's true that we are what we eat, and it's really changed. What's going on in most of the supermarkets right now is scary. It's something that's really unnatural.
Mhm. So now that Aries, well, she's gonna be in Aries, until long. But I was thinking that Saturn and Neptune are reaching Aries next year, and Saturn specifically will start, his journey. How do you foresee that conjunction between Saturn and Aries? I don't know exactly when it's happening, but I know it's probably in the next few years with Saturn approaching Aries in Aries.
Okay. All right. The first thing I have to lay a foundation for interpretations
Hmm.
and how planets work and interact with each other.
Hmm.
There's an evolutionary astrology concept of the idea of evolutionary states.
Hmm.
And in a nutshell, it's the consciousness that's brought to the event that determines the outcome of the event, the nature and the quality of it. So
Hmm.
if someone is in a consensus herd state mentality, they are going to have a different experience than to somebody who is individuating, recognizing who they are, beginning to act consciously to grow, or somebody who's totally spiritualized. There haven't been a lot of them around in the past 1,000 years,
Lately,
but
let's say. Yeah.
Ram Dass, I think he's a beautiful example. The consciousness that's brought to it explains why two babies born within feet of each other in the hospital and minutes apart have totally different life experiences.
Hmm.
They have the same transits, the same things happening to them, but they respond to those events in a different way. So it's how we respond, not react to what happens, that's going to determine the outcome. So we could look at any of these conjunctions from those kinds of perspective. Saturn and Neptune on one level is taking responsibility for your ability to have compassion, to see through the morass of stuff that's going on and begin to sort it out, to take responsibility for it. Or it can be someone who wants to take control of it and somehow use it to their advantage. See? Or it could be somebody who just is so blown away by it that emotionally they feel lost. They're at sea. It's a good Neptunian word. They're at sea. They're floating on a raft in the middle of the ocean, and they don't know where land is. So again, there's multiple ways that each of these things will occur. My hope, obviously, I will say that it is hope that a transit like that will have people have a lot of people, just like what happened here yesterday in the United States as the voter returns came in, that people are going to take responsibility for the collective.
Mm.
Saturn, Neptune, they're going to take responsibility for our global consciousness, not just our individual, what do I need? Oh, I want to get a new car. Well, that's fine. You can have a new car, but we need it. We need a new form of government, more importantly.
Of
So
course.
that's the way we have to address it. We have to know who's looking at it, who's walking through that space. And again, are we talking about an individual, a country?
Right.
It's so many levels that are operative here. It's very hard to define it specifically. The
Mhm.
the bigger one, to me, is the Uranus Sedna. I think that is huge. I did if you go on my website, evolutionaryastrologer.net, I did a forecast. I did a whole write-up on it.
Oh wow,
Anyone,
yes, you're very active writing. I can see. I'm here on his website, guys. I'm gonna leave his website, which is evolutionaryastrologer.net. I will leave it in the
yes,
description below. And he and Daniel is writing a lot actively about Sedna, conjunct Uranus, Aries, the Libra new moon, the winds of change, and yeah, I can see the warrior meets the mystic. Oh, that's beautiful. There's a lot of content on your website. So tell us more about your journey as an astrologer.
you can find me on YouTube at YouTube/Daniel Fiverson. It's pretty simple.
Hmm.
Uh, More recently, I have also been doing YouTubes and webinars for Kepler College as well. So
Ah,
you
oh
can go
yeah.
to the Kepler College YouTube page as well and see some of what I've done. But
Hmm.
I do them pretty regularly. But mostly I put them out I'm on Facebook and on my website.
Okay, so Daniel, how like if someone wants to become an evolutionary astrologer.
There are a number of good sources that are out there. First of all, the Jeffrey Wolf Green School is available,
Hmm.
and I studied there. It's changed. Jeffrey's no longer really a part of it. It's his daughter and a lot of the graduates who are running it. There was talk that Kepler College also wants to put together their own certification class. And so we're working towards that. It's hard because they're tied into a lot of copyright restrictions. There's been some hesitation. Honestly, I am toying with the idea of I was teaching classes about eight years ago, and I stopped when I got really involved with writing and being online in those kinds of situations. I didn't do any more classes, but I'm really considering uh, relaunching a class. I have a third manuscript. I'm been quite busy. I have a third manuscript that is the core principles of evolutionary astrology. And I'm certified, so I can certify people. I can't certify them as Jeffrey Wolf Green, but I can certify them as an evolutionary astrologer. So this is one of the things that I'm working towards in 2026, to be able to actually have a class, maybe 15, 20 serious students, and we'll get together and I will teach it to them, test them out, certify them, and show them how to do it.
That's amazing. So this is for 2026. What other plans do you have coming besides the book and this idea and working with Kepler College?
Well, actually, I'm also developing an Eris class for Kepler, and that's also
Wow.
that's also incipient. It's just beginning. We've been talking about it for a while, but now that the book is published, we're going to go ahead and do it. So
Oh,
that's
exciting.
probably going to be the next project that I'm going to birth is to bring people into Kepler College, because I think they're a wonderful institution. They do a lot to they foster every kind of astrology, it's not just EA.
Mm-hmm.
They have no EA, which is why they're talking to me. Um,
Okay.
but the Eris class I think is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be work. It's going to be like going to school. It's not come just read my book and talk about it. We do exams, we do test outs, we do chart interpretations, we do a lot of chart work. But it's a great experience, and when they come through it, they will have a really firm understanding of at least Eris, how Eris works, and they will also absorb by osmosis a lot of evolutionary astrology because that's what I bring to it. It's not just Eris from traditional Western astrology. It's Eris through the lens of evolutionary astrology.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole different perspective.
How do you prepare for an evolutionary reading? And also, I wanted to ask you because when you're an astrologer, especially evolutionary astrologer, maybe there is a fine line between being the astrologer and then you maybe become like a psychologist or a therapist. How do you deal with that like fine line with your clients or with your
All right. The easy answer is that I leave a lot of that to my spirit guides. Okay. Uh, when somebody contacts me, I basically send them a short email and I explain to them what's going to be involved and what we can do. But it's about them. It's not about me trying to spoon feed them everything I know. I want to know what it is that they want to know about their lives. What do they need in order to go forward and to find beyond their feet substantially. So it's really not about me and it's not about EA. It's about the clients themselves and what they want to take away. Because again, that's a pretty wide spectrum of in 90 minutes, there's no way that I can do it all. I walk everybody through a chart. I ask them enough questions to gauge their astrological knowledge. Do you want to know about what this means? You just want to know the astrology. How do you understand what a sign, a house, or a planet is? We go through some of the basics just to understand who they are, to be able to deliver the information to them in a way that they can digest it and then go forward and work with it. And quite frankly, not to minimize it, but I feel at the end of the day, May, if the client takes away one important thing about themselves that they need to know and work on, that I've done a good job. I'm not trying to fix them and everything that's wrong with them. I want them to be able to fix themselves, but I want to start where it is that they're having their greatest problem, whether it's a relationship, whether it's their some fear, or insecurity they have, or whatever it is, and to go outward from there. And obviously, sometimes it's more than one consultation where we work through it. And we meet also. I encourage everybody also to come for solar returns to
yeah.
follow up. Like, okay, I saw you 6 months ago. What's happened since then, and where are you with all this? And let's look at the next 12 months.
Mhm.
So it's a progressive process, but it's guided by what they need, not what I feel I need to teach them. And
Oh,
that's
that's so beautiful. Yeah. Also in our reading, and maybe people I think should know if they like evolutionary astrology. I certainly didn't know. You told me there is like a Pluto point. I can't remember the concept now, but there is Pluto and then the other point.
the
Can you
Pluto
like
polarity point, right? The Pluto
Plu
polarity point.
Yeah, I was that was fascinating because it certainly helped me personally understand about, my Pluto in the sixth house and all these things. So can you introduce us a little bit to that concept so people can learn something also about it?
The core work with evolutionary astrology works across two axes, two oppositions in the chart, Pluto and the Pluto polarity point. Pluto holds the information of what you've brought in with you into this lifetime, the lessons that you've been working on and are going to continue to work on. The Pluto polarity point are the lessons your soul wants you to work on going forward. The new ones. These are the new ones. This is what yes, you are working on these others that you brought with you, but this is where the direction that you need to take it. And that information gets transferred to the lunar nodes. to the south node, which holds all the emotional nature that we've brought in with us, our mother, our anger level, or all the things that cause us to act instinctively. It's instinctive. Everything that's really in that Pluto capsule. And then the north node again is the lunar nodes are the evolutionary trajectory, the karmic trajectory from past to future. So the lunar node, the north lunar node, wants the information of that Pluto polarity point. What's your soul's assignment in this lifetime? Specifically, what should I be working on? By the time we get through those two, we basically have the entire chart in our hands. And then we know what Mars is going to do because Mars is going to act upon Pluto's desires. We know what Venus is going to do because we understand what we need to do in order to find our own values and what's important to us, etc. We can take all the other planets and they all fit in to that framework. And that's why it's so good. It's not it's not jumping around. Well, you have Mars in Aries. You're going to get angry. Well, it's a little bit more than that. It tells you what your Mars is actually going to do specifically by house and by sign, but mostly in correlation to those core desires and those core energies in the chart itself. And that's what evolutionary astrology defines. Between the lunar nodes and Pluto and the Pluto polarity point.
Wow, I think it's fascinating how you explain it and how much information it can give us as well beyond what we know, the basic like Western astrology concepts that we already know. But Daniel, can you tell us also, if you have the book with you, can you read like a part of your book, or can you show us so what do you got there? Let's take a look. Table of contents.
Can you read it?
It's hard to read.
Let,
It gets
let me
blurry.
let me read it. Let me read
Yeah,
it
yeah,
to you.
yeah, yeah. Come on.
Uh, some of these are kind of poetic. The long arc of becoming, and a journey through the heavens really is a kind of a mini memoir of my own journey of kind of the story I told you of how I found
Oh.
astrology, how it found me, how I came to do this work. We Are Stardust, I borrowed from Joni Mitchell because we are part of the universe itself. We are not separate from it. We're not just some little speck of flesh, standing on some dirty ground. We what's as above, so below. What's around us is who we are, not just where we are. And we have to have that understanding to recognize that we're part of a much greater cosmos than we imagine. Those are not dead space rocks out there circulating around us. We are connected to each and every one of them through the planetary position of each of them in our chart. That energy cannot be created or destroyed. It exists, and we are that same energy. That's why the concept of eternal return, where we keep coming back lifetime after lifetime. We come
Hmm.
up from the animal kingdom, we move the consensus to individuated to spiritualized. We we are always in a constant state of growth. And as we move through that, we activate and express what it is that state of being has for not just for us, but for what's around us as well. Uh, then I get it. There was no Stone Age. I hate a lot of modern history because the Stone Age, and the gist of that chapter is, 2,000 years from now, they're going to call us the Plastic Age because we call it the
Oh my
Stone Age
God.
because the only thing that has survived for those centuries is made out of stone. Well, Plastic Age because the only thing that's going to survive our civilization at the moment
Oh,
is made out of plastic. Um,
wow.
so I talk about that a little bit. Um,
Wow.
then I get into the astronomy of Eris, the mythology of Eris, and I obviously I focus on the judgment of Paris, the apple of discord, which is the core of the Eris mythology itself.
Hmm.
I talk about apples. Apple is just so many apple stories in history. And then Helen of Troy. And Helen of Troy is a key figure here, and she's been totally misunderstood. She wasn't a wanton woman. She was really quite intelligent. And I don't want to give away the punchline here,
Of course.
but but the chapter is I describe how Helen is Eris, how everything that she did was an Erisian behavior. Okay.
Okay.
So I'll leave that to your
Nice.
imagination
Wow,
and
so interesting.
to come to read this. It's a really interesting story, and nobody's talked about this before, May.
You never heard it, no.
Yeah, nobody's talked about this. I get into the astrology of Eris, which is, pretty much mundane astrology, and then I talk about the Pluto Eris and Pluto Eris and Neptune Eris cycles, which are very long cycles between
Hmm.
these outer planets and the major things that have happened. I get into some not local, some modern history, the rise of authoritarianism and social disruptions. And then I get into climate change, spiritual traditions that are earth-based through Eris. And then I talk about a nation at the crossroads of power and the billionaire class and the plutocracy's last stand. What's happening right now around us with Pluto moving into Aquarius after Capricorn, this is the end of plutocracy. This
Hmm.
is the end of the Capricorn age
Hmm.
where men were good and women, were on their knees scrubbing the floor. It's over. It's been there, done that. We're moving away from that type of thinking.
Hmm.
I think the most important part of the book, besides the background of Eris itself, is that I walk through how Eris works in our charts. And so it's important to understand that with her 577-year orbit,
Hmm.
everybody on the planet right now has Eris in the sign of Aries. Unless you were, born before 1929, and I don't think there's anybody left on the planet that's
Yeah.
that old, right?
No.
And so what I do is rather than trying to delineate Eris in a sign, since it's all in the same sign, I'm Eris through the houses. And so it's really the greater portion of the book. In a minute, I'm going to give you a referral of someone who just wrote a really, really nice, good a review of
Hmm.
the book. And
Review.
he
Hmm.
and he mentioned, all the other books, have like maybe a paragraph about the chart. Well, I have a page and a half about each of these charts. So
Hmm.
you can really get into it. And there's lots of all famous, it's about 75 famous people. And they're not all saints. I mean, yes, I did Ram Dass, but
75.
yeah, 75 examples of real people and what their lives were about and how Eris was working in their chart. But, I did Ram Dass and I did Jeffrey Dahmer. So, there's the whole wide range. It's not just the saints, it's also the sinners. And they're all in here. And it's a really important read because this is where you can really look at it and understand by reading these chart examples how it's really working in your chart by house,
Yeah. Oh,
by
wow.
which house it's in. And then there's an afterword, there's some final stuff in there. I'll
Hmm.
read you the poem that I wrote for the front page. How's that?
Okay. Yeah, great.
She didn't bow. She didn't plead. She felt no hunger. She had no need. She stood alone outside the wall and threw the golden apple to them all. Upon its side, a phrase declared, to the fairest, none were spared. The sky split wide, the stillness broke, the goddesses turned, the heavens spoke. The gods took sides, the war began. A city burned, and so too man. And she vanished in the flame. No glory sought, no mortal name, but no one could ignore her thread, the truth she tossed, the lie it shed. For Eris doesn't storm the gate, she names the cracks we cultivate.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. It's like it's poetic, but also true, like true. Like you combined, it's so cool. Wow, I can't wait to get the book. Okay, guys, so I think we're gonna leave it here. Daniel, is there anything else you want to share with us about your work, about your plans, or just a message to close this talk about your work and Aries?
The only thing I will say is kind of a sales pitch, not just for me, but for EA. If you've never had a reading with me, a reading for with an evolutionary astrologer will change your life. There's no question. You will see aspects of yourself that no one has told you about. The first time I ever sat down to read for somebody in a fair 20 years ago, the
Mm.
first woman sat down in front of me and I read for her. And she said, first thing she said is, no one's ever told me that. And the second thing she said to me is, I am a psychic myself. And if she had told me that first, I probably would have gotten up and walked away because it was the first person I read for publicly. I've never looked back since that day. Okay. So that's what EA does. It will show you parts of yourself that you're not seeing. If you've had lots of astrology readings, come and compare this to what
Mhm.
you someone else has told you. It's
Yeah.
it's a life it's a life it's a life-changing event, not because I did it, but because of where it's coming from.
Hmm. Yeah, I think as someone who has had many astrology readings, and everyone is different, and I've learned from each of the astrologers. But yeah, the evolutionary astrology, you're always gonna discover parts of yourself that you didn't know were there. But most important, you will, I think, for me personally, it helped me understand myself better. Like, oh, okay, this is the reason why there's this pattern and how I can improve or take it in a better path for myself, patterns of cycles in my life that repeat and this kind of stuff. So I think it's brilliant. Daniel, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Please, guys, don't forget to check out Daniel's YouTube channel. I will leave everything below. I'm also on Instagram as Backstage Astrology, on YouTube, and there is a website also, backstageastrology.com, and Daniel's website, which is Evolutionary Astrologer. Wait, sorry.
Astrologer.net.
Yeah,
Yes.
.net, not .com. Thank you so much, Daniel, and thank you everyone for hanging out with us tonight. See
Thank,
you
thank,
in the next.
thank, thank, thank you, May. You are a blessing in yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.